Welcome to the Grand Archivist's collection. These are some of the Grand Archivist of the Scottish Rite's most prized possession, and we're going to show them to you for the first time ever on YouTube right now. Welcome to the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry channel. I'm Maynard Edwards, 32nd degree KCCH, Scottish Rite Freemason, and host here on the blog. Before we go any further, I know you know the drill. Subscribe to the channel. It helps us make more videos. Give us a thumbs up. Drop your comments below. And please, if you enjoy this, I would love if you would share it with a friend. If you're a Freemason, especially if you're a Scottish Rite Freemason, definitely drop a comment below. Shout out your lodge, your valley, whatever. We love to hear from brothers wheresoever dispersed. This is the Grand Archivist's room. Basically, the Grand Archivist of the Scottish Rite, he's got so much stuff squirreled away in so many parts of the building that we wanted to give him a dedicated museum space where he could show off some of his favorite items in the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry collection. These come directly from the Grand Archivist's archive. Brother Art de Hoyos is our Grand Historian and Grand Archivist, and he's been doing this for a long, long time, and he's seen so many Scottish Rite and Masonic artifacts from all over the world, and he has cherry-picked the very best ones for this very special museum space. As I've mentioned previously on the channel, there have been times when we have done videos for a particular set of people to show off certain parts of the House of the Temple building and museum collection. This video is one of those videos. Brother Art and I, we worked on a video, we did a really great tour, and not many people have gotten a chance to see it. So I decided to edit it up just a little bit and share it with the larger audience here on YouTube so you can see exactly what kind of artifacts our Grand Archivist is housing here inside the House of the Temple collection in his very personal space with some of the neatest artifacts we have. So without further ado, here is Brother Art de Hoyos, 33rd degree Grand Cross, the Grand Archivist and Grand Historian of the ancient and accepted Scottish Rite of Freemasonry, discussing the Archivist's collection.
Hi, brethren, and welcome to the Scottish Rite's newest museum space, the Grand Archivist Collection, and I am your Grand Archivist and Grand Historian, Art de Hoyos. It's going to be a little bit of fun today for me to walk around and show off some of the things that I consider to be some of the cooler things that we have here at the House of the Temple. This building was actually designed by John Russell Pope, America's foremost neoclassical architect, and was built between 1911 and 1915. And when we were built, the archives was actually the oldest part of the building because it has one of those bank-style vaults in the basement. And if you've ever seen a bank destroyed, you know that the vault is the very last thing standing. You don't put the vault in after the building's done, you put it in and then build the building around it. Well, that's how it is here at the House of the Temple. We have three main vault areas here at the House of the Temple for the archives. The vault at the basement, which I mentioned, is really for the ritual. But we have a lot of other things that are given to us that really speak to what our fraternity is about, and that's the material culture. So we have a library that has our literary works, of course, archives that are divided into different sections that might have the correspondence, and then we have the things that we all like to collect. They might be Masonic memorabilia, might be a bit of regalia, might be a jewel, might be a piece of pottery, and that's the kind of stuff that we have in this Grand Archivist collection. This gallery was put together about a year and a half ago, and because the pandemic hit right after we constructed it, we never really had an opportunity to show it off. And so really, you are the first people that are going to get the first full tour of this collection. And I'm happy to kick that off right now. Let's take a look at some things that we have. This first patent is really interesting to me because it points out how active the pre-Scottish Rite was in Charleston. And by pre-Scottish Rite, what I mean is the 25-degree system that was known as the Order of the Royal Secret, which was really the parent of the Scottish Rite. Now, the leading officer of that body, and you'll see his signature right here, was Francois Auguste de Grasse Tilly, or Tilly, whose father, of course, was the famous French admiral. Now, what's important about this patent is that he signs it as Sovereign Grand Commander, and this is the earliest patent that I know of where that title is associated with these high degrees. We believe that that title was inherited when the Scottish Rite was created in 1801, and that this brother was one of the earliest members of our Supreme Council. Also in this collection, we see some artifacts that are also connected with that body. In Charleston, we have two of the original seals of the Order of the Royal Secret. We have the seal of the Council of Princes of Jerusalem, and for the consistory of the Royal Secret. At that time, it was called Prince of the Royal Secret. And these are really neat. They're hand-carved silver seals that were used to affix the kind of foil seals that you see on patents in earlier days. They weren't just printed on like we do it today. There's a lot of really neat stuff inside of here. If you can see, we have some of these Blue Lodge jewels that were hand carved out of mother of pearl also. I'm going to take you and give you a quick look at some of the things that we have here, pointing out some of them that are some of my favorites. If we look up top, we can see a collection of fine pottery and porcelain. And these are really remarkable to me. A lot of these things were very popular beginning in about the mid-1700s. And there's just a variety of different techniques that they use. Some of them were hand-painted, like these French bowls that we have on the bottoms. Others used a process that we call transferware, where the design was printed on a sheet of paper and it was applied to the pictures, for example, and that it was kind of baked into there, and it was the paper was taken off of that, and it transfers the image in there. And this is why it's very popular to see a variety of very similar looking designs, because these artists would copy each other. And because they did copy each other, sometimes they copied the pattern as they looked at it, which means it would be a reverse image. And so sometimes you see the characters or the images facing one way and sometimes another, and that's the reason, because they carved them as they copied them. If we look at some of the glass work over here, it's really remarkable to me the way that these are hand engraved. These aren't just glass, some of these are crystal, and it's really fine quality etching that we see on a lot of them. But just the quality of the work here is really something that to me is amazing. You would have to come and visit this building to see it, and I hope that you do, to see how remarkable these are. These large bowls at the bottom are famously called punch bowls. Most of them are from France, and they were used for festive boards or in celebration at a lodge event. You can imagine they were filled with whatever punch was popular among the brethren at the time, and they would dip their cups inside of there, and everyone had a great time. In this case is one of my favorite pieces. It's actually the oldest Scottish Rite patent in the world. It's Frederick Dalco's 1801 patent, and it's hand-drawn, signed by the original members of our Supreme Council. And what's interesting about it is that not only is it hand-drawn and hand-watercolored, but the detail on it is truly amazing. It has a black double-headed eagle, and that eagle actually has pupils. And from what I understand is they would use a single hair with ink to put the dot in the eagle's pupil. The little apron bags next to it are really fine beaded work. They're very intricate, must have taken a lot of time to make these things. These were treasured items because they did cost money, of course, to produce something like that. And some of the aprons in older times tended to be quite small. Some of the European lodges still have very small, thin leather aprons today, and they could fold up and they would carry them there. There's just a variety of really interesting things here. I want to move over and let you see one of the engraving plates that we used for our patents. This was a printing plate that was designed in Albert Pike's day, and the basic design remained unchanged for many years following Pike's death in 1890. So we have the original, and you can see how it was inked, and the copy was produced from this, and that the seals were set separately. But it's just incredible, beautiful work again. It's the kind of thing that makes you wish that we had these kind of artifacts, or I should say these kind of certificates, still available today. For practical reasons, of course, it's not popular to carry these around as they were once done. Members used to carry their patents when they would travel and produce those as their bona fides. They didn't carry dues cards like we have today. When I took this position in 1999, one of the first things that I did was start to look through the archives, or I should say our archives vault, to see actually what we had. We didn't really have a good idea of a lot of our collections. And for me, one of the most amazing things that I discovered was this book, or I should say bound manuscript, and 3 others that accompanied it. They were the original records of the Supreme Council of France that was created in 1804. The person that I had mentioned, de Grasse, was the founder of this Supreme Council, and these are all of the original foundation documents, the correspondence, and even a copy of that 33rd degree, which they used at the time. It's surrounded here by a number of pieces of regalia that are also from France that to me are just beautifully done. They're beaded work, they have sequins on them, just the level of detail that they used to put into these older pieces of regalia is something that we really don't find matched today. These are the original paintings of the famous lodge over Simpkins' store, which has been called the plainest lodge in all the land. It was in South Park, Colorado. Yes, there really is a South Park. And from what I understand is this was the type of lodge that was typical for a mining town or a pioneer town. And in the late 1950s, early 60s, I think 1959, 1960s, something like that, is the lodge was completely restored to look like the original. And these paintings were done in commemoration with a poem that was published about 120 years ago about this lodge. And they really speak to what the fraternity was like for people at that time. It didn't matter what your stature was in the lodge. Everybody was welcome. I like the old-timey kind of dress that the people are wearing in here. And curious to me, almost all of the members of this lodge seem to be related because they all look very, very much like each other, or almost all very much like each other. But again, these are the originals. We did have some prints made up about 20 years ago, and today those have become collector's item. You might have one in your local lodge. In this upper display here, we have what are called ginger beer bottles, and it's just what it sounds like. During the early 1800s, it was popular to drink mild beers because there weren't always the freshest water supplies for people to have, and because it was pretty good stuff. But these Masonic bottles have become quite collectible. Most of them were made on the East Coast. And what they have is a representation of a typical Masonic tracing board. You might have the 2 pillars with an arch, with a keystone, between which is an altar upon which lays the Bible, the square, and the compass, and other Masonic characters or designs around it. Came in a variety of colors, some cranberry glass, some brown, some bluish, some turquoise. There's just a wide variety of these. But they're absolutely beautiful. I myself have collected a couple of these, and if you're lucky, you can find reproductions, high quality reproductions, sometimes online, maybe on eBay or something like that. We look down here and we come to one of my favorite things, which are anti-Masonic exposures. It's a terrible period for Freemasonry, of course, but it taught us a lot about the fraternity itself. As most of us know, in 1826, William Morgan disappeared in New York, in Batavia, New York, and purported to have written an expose of the for rituals of the fraternity. It started an anti-Masonic movement which lasted until about 1842. Morgan was never heard from again, but as a result of his disappearance, there was a variety of exposures written on Freemasonry. Previously, the fraternity had been looked at as like the handmaiden of religion, a friend to society and to government, but after that we were denounced at pulpits, and for this long period it was very unpopular to be a Mason. Most of the lodges in the United States closed down. Many of our members just simply denounced it and left, but after this period was done, about 1842, there was a resurgence, and Freemasonry became a very popular thing again. And what is interesting about these books is that they tell us about that early type of Freemasonry before it was modified slightly to be the kind of organization that it is today. Well, of course, anti-Masonry didn't start with William Morgan. We have here an expose of Masonry Dissected, which was written by Samuel Pritchard. And the first edition was done in 1730, and it describes the very first version, as far as we know, of the Master Mason's degree with the Hiramic legend. So those are the interesting things about it to me, is that it gives us what might be a glimpse into the past of our Masonic history. Might be a hostile witness, but it's still something that we can look to and that we as scholars use today. This is one of my favorite aprons. It was actually designed by Giles Fonda Yates, who lived from 1799 to 1859 and was one of the Grand Commanders of the Northern Masonic jurisdiction. He was originally a member of the Southern jurisdiction and reawakened the bodies of Henry Andrew Franken that were in Albany, New York, and later moving them to Schenectady, and was instrumental in building the Supreme Council for the Northern Masonic jurisdiction. He was an extremely interesting person. He was an accomplished attorney, was a surrogate for his county. He was a newspaper editor, an author. He was interested in antiquities and the history of Native Americans, and Freemasonry was his #1 love. He designed not only this apron, but he wrote the very first Scottish Rite Monitor, which unfortunately disappeared and was never published. But the amount of detail that he put into the design of this apron is really remarkable. A lot of the aprons at this period were very simple, but Yates looked to put as much of the symbolism in here as he could possibly fit in. And next to Yates's apron is Albert Pike's personal copy of Morals and Dogma. Now, of course, everybody's got a copy of Morals and Dogma, but not everybody has Albert Pike's copy. So when you come here, come get your photograph taken next to it. It's something to see. If we look up a little bit higher, we see a little bit more of the Masonic pottery that we have and glassware. And these are firing glasses. The very thick bottoms are made for slamming down on the table after you had your drink as a kind of celebratory toast. One of the coolest looking things we have in this collection is this Washington frame. And not just because it's George Washington, but if you look around it, cut out of silver, hand-tooled are all of the symbols of the Scottish Rite degrees. I don't know how long it took to create this thing, but it's simply amazing. The detail on it is such that even the eagle has feathers up here at the top. He's got eyes. And if you have the chance, come and look at it, because you can identify the principal symbols of the Scottish Rite and the York Rite in this frame. Welcome to the archives. This is where we keep a lot of the larger things that we have, like patents and maps, things like that that wouldn't fit into some of our smaller files. I'd like to just show you a couple of these. There's too much to show right now. But if we just open one of them, you can see that these are original patents from the early 1800s, similar to that of Frederick Dalco in a lot of ways. So you can catch a nice look of that. It's very popular to use the same type of design, even if they were hand-drawn. And so Masonic organizations around the world captured some basic symbols, especially for the high degrees. You could tell if they were connected to the Scottish Rite or Order of the Royal Secret. That might seem like it's a very intuitive thing, but with a lot of the Grand Lodges, for example, their patents are so different that you wouldn't know what Grand Lodge or what jurisdiction it was from. But with the Scottish Rite, it was quite easy to look just by the general style of them. So these are, as I said, about the time that the Supreme Council was founded, the early 1800s. And let's go up one more drawer here. Take a look at this. These are patents from about 1850, 1860 forward. Just as colorful, just as interesting, but just a little bit different in style. But it's just a small example of some of the really neat stuff that we have here at the House of Temple that we're working to catalog and hopefully use in either some scholarship or put on display. Well, I probably shouldn't do this, but I'm going to take you to see the treasure room of the House of the Temple. You ready? This is where it all is. All right, I was just kidding. But come on by the House of Temple and visit. Hope to see you guys soon.
We couldn't resist throwing a little joke in there at the end, but I know there's a few tinfoil hat conspiracy nuts out there who think that we probably do have like the relics of antiquity hidden in the building. And we've got some really cool Masonic stuff, and it's something you definitely need to come to the House of the Temple to see for yourself. Thanks for joining us here on YouTube, everybody. Don't forget, drop a comment below, give us a thumbs up, share the video, and of course, subscribe to the channel. I'm Maynard Edwards, 32nd degree KCCH, Scottish Rite Freemason. We'll catch you next time. Hey, if you're watching this video and you want to learn how to become a Freemason, click this video right here and it's going to give you a step-by-step process to follow on how to connect with a Masonic Lodge. And if you're already a Master Mason interested in joining the Scottish Rite, click this link right here and it's going to take you to the Scottish Rite website where you can sign up to become a Scottish Rite Mason right now.